Hi, it's Katie Taylor speaking. Welcome to the Creative Collective podcast series. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet on today, the people of the nation, and pay my respect to the elders both past and present. Today I'm interviewing Belinda Williams. She is an energetic Australian watercolourist who over 25 years has captured the truth of the Australian outback and its people with raw honesty and realism. Born in Moree, New South Wales, she loves the Australian bush and its universal appeal, and has done so since her childhood growing up in regional Australia. Her first exhibition was in the town of Orange, New South Wales, in the early 90s, 1993. And she's exhibited steadily ever since. Belinda is genuine with a beautiful mix of creativity, authenticity, and fun, bringing a wonderful earthy exuberance and passion to all of her projects and commissions. I am absolutely delighted to be speaking with her today as my co-creator and friend. Belinda, how are you?
I am so well, Katie. It's lovely to be here with you this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited. Now, you're up there in Warwick, up there in Queensland. How are you coping?
Katie, in a country town, being, back in the bush, I couldn't have chosen really a better place to be in this time of COVID. So for me, being a full-time professional artist, nothing really much has changed for me. I'm fortunate enough that I can go outdoors when I please. I can go for a stroll around the block. I'm able to walk to get my groceries at any time of the day. And really, predominantly, I would say that for me, I've actually been able to create space and time for myself. So I've been able to engage in a teaching project, which, probably may not have happened if life had just carried on as what we knew as normal. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm doing really, really well. And I really say that from the bottom of my heart. I'm just loving sitting in my studio, being alone, living the solitary life that I've always chosen and experienced.
Yeah, that's great. I know that you've got some very special friends too, and you you do have your own home and studio there up in Warwick, but you're also very connected with people online, and you're a great communicator, and you do reach out to lots of people. So whilst you're there doing your solo thing, so you just mentioned an art project that may not have happened. Is that the ISO Artiscape that I was a participant in?
That's right, Katie.
Tell us about that.
So back in April, I had a phone call from a mentor, and, he often checks in with me and he wanted to know how I was doing. And I shared with him that I was, busy as ever. I actually, not due to COVID, but I had quite an increase in commissions that came in around about in March and then April. And that's normally a time actually when I'm, committed and down at the Royal Easter Show, being resident artist for Jeremy Matisse. But at that time, when we went into the first lockdown in Australia, I received this call, and it was from a gentleman that used to be a Moree resident. And he actually said to me, Belinda, I know people that are bored. He said, I know people that actually need to be creative. And he knew a range of people, including his wife, that actually would sign up to a course if I created an online course and actually taught online. And that mentor was really my first call to action to actually really seriously consider running a course and then creating the content and actually putting that together. So that resulted in me creating ISO Artiscape.
Yeah, which was just fantastic. And I know that we might dive into that a little bit more as we go through. So I'm always fascinated, you've got an enormous following, you're a very well-known artist, you're a beautiful friend to lots of people, and, it all began somewhere. So tell us why you do what you do. and where it began.
So back when I was not even a teenager, I dreamt up this big dream. And my dream from a very early age as a kid was to be a full-time Australian artist. And, you know, I dreamt that up because I had this edge of creativity, and that came out when I was at school as a kid. But I didn't ever tell anyone, Katie. You know, I kept that to myself until really I embarked on that dream and took that huge faith of leap. So, you know, I was born and raised in the bush, and, you know, was privileged enough to, in a drought, be sent away to boarding school. And the girls that were at boarding school with me, they still remind me, you know, I would sit up in bed before lights out and I would actually sketch people's faces. I was drawn to, you know, my friends at school, and I sketched those girls' faces. Yeah, and I still have those sketchbooks to this day. So it was really back at school. I practiced my art through school, and then, you know, I did art naturally for my HSC, and then I left school, and then I really, as a child, you know, I had found my purpose, because that was just innately within me. And really, when I left school, you know, like, my art was there. You know, I had my first exhibition when I was in my early 20s at Orange, as you said in the introduction, and then my exhibitions rolled on from there. I started to actually have sellout exhibitions. So that occurred throughout my 20s until I made that commitment to myself when I was 27, and I decided that I was going to lob into my art full time and actually really do what I had always dreamt of from a little kid. So I hopped into it full time at the age of 27, and I thought, Katie, you know, I can step away from my job. I was working in sales in Cadbury Sweats on the drink side, and I thought, you know, if this doesn't work, I can always go back and apply for a job in any field that I like. So I knew I had a fallback, and probably that's why I decided to take the leap of faith.
Wow. And what a journey it's been. And you're, you know, I live in Tamworth, and when we were house hunting, I was drawn to a painting on somebody's wall. They were selling their house and we were looking at it, and I recognized it as your artwork. So I know that your pieces are appreciated in many places, not only in Australia but around the world, and your commissions are just extraordinary, like the one you're doing at the moment. So Belinda, you know, you're an amazing storyteller, and you have got so many positive vibes and many experiences. What is it that you're keeping you motivated at the moment? You've done this amazing ISO art, but what really keeps you motivated every day?
Well, Katie, as we know, you know, for everybody, you know, work really is such a big part of our life. I mean, you know, we're self-employed like I am, or we have a 9-to-5, and then people naturally have developed different streams of income. So for me, I'm self-motivated. I've always been like that. I've always been very disciplined. So for me, it's actually really not every day. I mean, you know, I might stay up a little bit too late one night painting a commission, and I might have a little bit of a sleep in, but I actually just really tune into my body, which, as we know, is so important. But for me, you know, my days are motivated by my work. So I will have a deadline, and I need to naturally, you know, work hard, you know, if it is an oversized painting, which is what I'm doing right now. So yeah, my motivation really, I mean, you know, we need to, as we know, have a balance in life. So, you know, I've got like a little routine, like a morning ritual, like that I give myself time in the morning. So that might be simply like going for a walk around the block, you know, which I'm able to do in Queensland right now. It might be hopping on my yoga mat in the morning and doing a few like stretches just to, you know, warm up my hips. And because I sit a lot, so I need to be, and I am very aware that I need to probably move a little bit more than other people that work in a physical job. So I'll start my day with a green drink, which is something that I've implemented this year, which I just wake up feeling hungry for the nutrition of a green drink. So I'm a very self-disciplined person at the end of the day, and people that have known me for a long time know that about me.
Yeah, fantastic. I often wish that you were making a green drink for me, these beautiful smoothies, and actually your cooking, you're very creative with your cooking, and I know that you delight in, you know, growing beautiful gardens and vegetables. And is that a bit of a creative outlet for you?
Absolutely, Katie. I mean, I grew up, my mother, you know, when I grew up West Timori, you know, she had a beautiful garden. And as a child and then growing up through my teen years, you know, I would follow her around the garden. So I would learn the names of plants and shrubs and roses. And yeah, I think in life you either do have a green thumb or you don't. So, and I've always been drawn, actually, you know, the more that, you know, I've journeyed through life, I enjoy learning about health, as you know, and as we talk about in our personal conversations. So I love edible gardens, and that's what I have exactly now. Like, I have so much chard, it's not funny, and being a creative, you know, I love to incorporate colours into my food. So I think my nasturtium bush, I don't know how much more it's going to grow, but it's like, it's got a big spread on. So yeah, thank you. I do love cooking, and whether it's just for myself or whether I might have a few friends around, or whether I'm preparing for a dinner party, I find cooking easy.
Yeah,
and I
you're
know
good
that
at
that's
it.
come from my creativity.
Yeah, I sense that you're very comfortable creating, you know, culinary delights, and your nasturtium butter is going to be the next thing. So I think you've got a few people following you with interest on that front. Belinda, I know you're not a big reader, mainly because your painting requires you to concentrate and it does tire out your eyes. But is there anything, are there any books or anything that you're listening to at the moment that you think's worth sharing with our audience?
Yeah, Katie, well, the space that we're in, and because we are both so similar, I love tuning into entrepreneurs and actually tuning in and listening as I paint throughout my days. So I went to school with a lady, a very successful entrepreneur, Lisa Messenger, who a lot of people listening to this podcast will be familiar with. And I recently bought her book On Purpose, because I want to read all about what Lisa, you know, her message is in the purpose and her journey through life. But for me, I'm particularly attracted to country women that have had an element of trauma in their life and their stories. So I reached out to a lady last year, Lucy Gallagher. Lucy lives on a farm and is very hands-on. Lucy was featured on the project, and she talked about the drought and when they ran out of water. So I follow Lucy and her continued stories. There's another very young girl, Zoe Hayes, who also a lot of people in Australia will be familiar with. Now, Zoe lost her mother to suicide 6 years ago, and she is doing everything she can every day in actually promoting and raising awareness around depression, because Zoe is very open in her story around depression. I follow a very good friend who I grew up with, who has now a national charity. Her name is Shanna Wan. Shanna has become a very popular household name with her story around alcoholism and the trauma that she suffered as a young woman. And then I've got a really great friend from Moree, Nikki Boland. I often, like for instance, last night she sent me the story of her brother who was in a plane crash, and I listened to that podcast of Guy Boland. So I get really inspired by people who have overcome their trauma and come to naturally a much better place in their life. So yeah, it's a great spread of who I listen to. And then, you know, I might be talking to a friend and I say, oh my gosh, you know, you need to listen to Brené Brown. You know, there's a whole realm of people. So that's just a few of the people that I love to tune into.
Oh, that's fantastic, Belinda. I love hearing you talk about it, because you know, you've obviously shared some of the links with me, but it's, you're right, it's through other people's experiences that we can either relate or identify with, and it's somehow comforting to know that part of life is the human struggle, and trauma is a big part, and we all have a different relationship with it. Interestingly, I was listening, a friend from school sent me a link to a recent article on the ABC about the trauma of boarding school and how there have been studies done in England, not so much in Australia, because the age that we send them, or children have been sent in England have started very young, and that's a very traumatic experience, and how that's played out in their life. And then it's not until that they start to, maybe when they're older, look into it, and then they understand why they are the way they are, or how it is so with their relationships. So yeah, I learn a lot from those sort of interviews and podcasts too. So I think, we both are very passionate about lots of things, and certainly the subject of mental health and suicide awareness is why we're collaborating. But I'm just wondering, before we talk about that, I'm just wondering if there's ever been a time in your life that's been particularly dark that you would like to share with our audience, and just how you have, managed your way through that.
Yeah, sure, Katie. So for me, naturally, people that I grew up with and people that have known me for a long time would be aware that, I lost my father when I was 14, and my father, I should say, he was 44 years of age. So my father, Harry, he, had a really lovely childhood, as I did. He grew up on the land. He grew up doing all the things that young boys do in contributing, to a farm life, as they grow. And back in those days, there was drenching of sheep unprotected, and use of chemical, before the days of OH&S. So with Dad, very sadly, he developed, like a lot of men his age, what they call organic phosphate poisoning. So essentially what that is, and people will be familiar with this, it's blood toxicity. So it is a chemical poisoning. So with that, when Dad was very, very young, he developed that. But back in those days, they didn't know what it was. So there really was no treatment for that.
Undiagnosed, was it?
That's right, because they didn't know what it was back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 36 years ago when Dad passed on. So Dad's story is that, that led to his depression. So that chemical toxicity then led to his depression. And, I grew up in a really happy family. We all, husband and wife, partner and girlfriend, like, nothing is perfect, as we know. But I do remember, like, a few household squabbles. I mean, that's just very natural. But, as I said, I grew up in a really beautiful, supportive, loving family. And Dad was here one day and gone the next. We didn't know that he was going to go. And that was the way that, he thought that was going to be better for him. But as we know, when people take that option, it is the devastation, that they leave behind for their family and their friends. So that for me, naturally, Dad leaving at that time, I mean, it was such a shock to all of us. But I do say, for Dad, because now I understand, his story and the pain that he was in. Like, I do actually, and I do say this with love, that I'm happy for him that he's in that place, because he's in a much happier place.
Away from the pain and his turmoil. And I suppose with all that toxicity, there's all those chemical imbalances. And yeah, you don't see light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, that's exactly right. And like, thinking about it actually out loud now with you, Katie, is that, perhaps 36 years down the track, to this day and this present time, things might have been really different for him with what's available to us right now. It may just have been different.
Yeah. 36 years ago. Wow, that must have had such an impact on you. How did your family cope with that, Belinda? Do you remember?
Yeah, so for me, Katie, I was at boarding school, and I I wasn't a naughty kid at school. I was in a Saturday detention. So I was pulled out of that detention, and this had occurred, you know, the night before. So Dad was flown by air ambulance to Sydney, but he didn't make it. He passed away like in the early hours. So then I was pulled out of the detention, taken to the airport, flew out of Sydney back to Moree, and landed. And, you know, it was 2 weeks. I went home for 2 weeks. You know, I didn't even take like a skirt home. Mum had to make my skirt to go to the funeral. Dad was cremated over at Tamworth, so there was a drive actually. We had to go from Moree to Tamworth because in those days, well, you know, the closest crematorium was in Tamworth. And you know, there was hundreds of people there. You know, Dad, he was a popular man. He was a happy man. He had lots of friends. He had a beautiful sense of humour. So, you know, he was just such a loved man. So, you know, it was a lot of people that I'd never seen before, you know, as a 14-year-old, you know, young girl. And then I went back to boarding school. 2 weeks later, that was it. So.
But that experience doesn't leave you, does it?
Yeah, look, Hadia, it doesn't. It doesn't. But the thing is for me that I just remember Dad for, you know, what I explained him to be, you know, that beautiful, fun, you know, happy man. But, you know, he had this illness that led to his depression.
Yes.
So, yeah, as we know, you know, we don't in life, you know, go over things, you know, we work through things. And that's why, you know, you and I relate so well, or one of the reasons that we relate so well. And, you know, at the end of the day, there is a lot of people out there that actually go through, you know, the experience that I have. There's so many people, and you know, like growing up in a country town, like, you know, I naturally have a lot of connections back to Moree, and then I hear, like these days, of people, you know, it doesn't necessarily hit the news, but we know, you know, what happens in our own town, and we hear that. So, yeah, sadly, it is what it is. But I remember Dad for, you know, for all those years that I had with him, and I was very blessed to have, you know, those 14 years with him.
Yes.
You know, that it's a blessing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Belinda. Like, you are very courageous, and it shows that you had a very deep connection with your father, and also how and why people, I think, in today's, from what I know, you know, they turn to you and they talk to you, and because you have a very deep understanding and a great empathy and compassion around this subject. I know that you did. I know on your website you have it, Be Kind, and that's the Dolly project, and you've thrown your support behind that story, and making sure that we do talk about what goes on in a way that we can all heal and support each other, so it doesn't have to be.
That's right. And excuse me, at the end of the day, as we all know, Katie, you know, what makes a difference in people's lives with mental health is connection. That's simply, you know, really one of the top things that it boils down to. You know, we all have to be connected.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not like once in a while, you know, it needs to be on a consistent basis where, you know, we pick up the phone and we call a friend.
Yeah.
You know, we do something for ourselves. You know, if we're feeling a little bit low, you know, we get out in the fresh air. You know, we go and make some healthy food. You know, we have real conversations like what we're having now. And you know, what we need to do, I feel, is to be able to encourage people to be really raw and vulnerable, and really express how you're truly feeling. You know, if you're not having a great day. And for me, you know, like sharing my story with you today on the podcast about my father, you know, deciding to opt out of life, you know, and this has been a reminder for me, like since losing Dad as a teenager, is that, you know, what I have been very proactive about is like reaching out to friends when I haven't heard from them, or when I don't see them about, or when they're not visible on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So connection, it is so important.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And that's what's brought us together. We've been connected and we are collaborating. And thank you for sharing that about your father, Belinda. And I hope that, you know, I know we will get to talk about it in private, but also I hope it helps open up the conversation for others to either reach out to us, to our collective, or just to someone, say, you know, I really want to talk about this. And we've all got ways of coping and bringing ourselves out of dark days. And fortunately, we're going to be exploring that a bit further in our upcoming series that we're running some workshops in Tamworth. So I know we're both super excited about what we're going to be collaborating on. Do you want to just talk about why you're excited about it, Belinda?
Well, I would love to. Thank you. There's a number of reasons, Katie, why I'm excited about collaborating with you in our project going forward. And one of the reasons is that, and we spoke about it the other day, it's about when you go into business, you really want to go into business with someone that you truly, truly are aligned with, and someone that has your back. And we have talked about this, like there are so many beautiful words that start with C. I could think of so many, but I would make this podcast go for way too long. But cultivate is another beautiful word, connection, which I just spoke about. And collaborate is one of the words starting with C that I wanted to mention today, because, you know, in my listenings, you know, when I sit and paint all day, you know, collaboration is so important, because really, you know, we can do things on a singular basis, but it makes it so much more effective if we collaborate. And something that I think is really important, you know, for, you know, the listeners today for us to share, Katie, is that, you know, like, as we know, going forward, the way of the world going forward is online. A lot of businesses are going online. You know, it really is the way forward. And Katie and I were introduced by a mutual friend, which we are so both grateful for, because, you know, our paths may have crossed down the track, but everything is timely. And Katie and I spend so much time together, thank goodness for FaceTime, that we can actually see and feel as though we're a little bit closer to one another than really what we are. We're about a 5-hour drive apart from one another. We've got a border between us at the moment, but we have met once. But we are soul sisters, and that is just so beautiful, and that is the power of connection. And now we have gone on to collaborate in this beautiful movement going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Belinda. I so appreciate what you have to say, and I feel it too. I'm so excited. And it's just been a delight speaking with you. I know that you're followed online through Instagram, outback_painter, if anybody's interested. Also, Belinda's strangely had her website hacked. So if you want to follow her on her website, I'll give you the details. It's www.belinda-williams-artist.squarespace.com. And if you'd like to keep in touch with Belinda, please do. We will be posting a lot more about our creative collective, the collaboration, and our upcoming workshops for women that we're doing the inaugural ones in Tamworth called Survive to Thrive 2020. And there'll be a lot more content coming out about that. But thank you, Belinda. You're an absolute gem. You really light up my life. I love speaking with you as often as we do, and I so appreciate you doing this podcast with me. Any final thoughts?
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Katie. It really, really has. And we've both been looking forward to this day very, very much. And I suppose I'd just like to close out with that, yeah, look, I've had a journey. Katie has had a journey. As I just mentioned, we are collaborating and going forward together, which excites us no end. And I just want to, yeah, leave you with the thought that, you know, many people are on a journey, and, you know, we have found our purpose. A lot of people go through life and actually, you know, they go through life a little bit lonely, and, you know, they don't quite find their direction. So it's exciting to know that people can follow us on our journey. And I know that we haven't figured it all out, but what we do know is that we are definitely on the path to doing that. And it's just very exciting for us going forward together. So thanks, Katie. I've thoroughly enjoyed the chat today.
Yeah. It's wonderful, Belinda. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure.